Hello everyone. We're just coming up on 3 o'clock and today we have our webinar clinic with Marion Bergin from The Nice Things, and you would have all had previous encounters with Marion during our webinar clinic series, and she has received a phenomenal response. So today she's going to look at all that is video and the positive elements and how you can use it, particularly at the moment, to promote your work. And it's a clinic format today, so what would be really good is if people want to ask questions in the chat box as we go along. I will interrupt Marion or wave at her or something, and we will address the questions as we go along. So I see we have a good group coming along. Marion, I'm just allowing them now a couple of seconds to log on. It takes a little while. And with that, I'm going to welcome you, Marion, and off we go.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, really delighted to be back with DCCI delivering this webinar today. Any of those, there was probably quite a few of you who joined me for my previous webinars. So the previous ones were on Instagram. Today I'm going to be talking about something, well, it's all sort of in the mix really these days, isn't it? But today I'm going to be talking about video content, creative direction. So something linked to social media, but a slightly different set of skills. Right. Yeah, for those of you who haven't met me before, my background, so my journey to video actually is a bit of an unusual one. My journey to all things digital is a bit of an unusual one because I was a maker by trade. So I started in fashion buying, and then I decided I wanted to start my own fashion label. So I started that in London and scaled it internationally over the course of 6 years to really big, really solid export business, manufacturing in 3 different countries. And I guess, you know, all the big brands now are digital, and the platforms, the digital platforms are really well established. Social media is a huge thing. When I started my brand, it was 2008, which kind of feels like the dark ages, because we didn't even have Instagram then. So that will tell you how long ago it feels. But yeah, I'd never run an e-commerce store. Like, the back end of our website was a thing called CubeCart, which was hard coded. And thankfully my business partner's husband was a coder, so he used to do all of our web development. But like, we literally were figuring things out, much like yourselves, but we were figuring things out as we went along. And my role was creative director of the label, and as creative director, I also headed up e-commerce. So it was during this time that I started to get interested in graphic design, which was something that I actually wanted to study at university, but didn't study history of art and Italian instead. And sort of graphic design, you know, and designing all of the assets, so the digital marketing assets and the home pages, and working with wireframes. I was so excited by it all, and I felt like it was just another extension of my creativity. So for me, it was, you know, I could be designing an amazing necklace or I could be designing an amazing website. It was just different tools that I was using. So having that sort of curious nature and that design angle, I started looking at how we could push our e-commerce. Like, what can we do that's different? What can we do that's new? You know, animation, you know, how do we bring that into the mix? And it kind of became my playground. So I think where, you know, with very big labels or very big businesses, it is quite challenging to do something different or to experiment with things, you know, because it has a much broader impact because you have a much bigger market. But it's the digital space became my playground. So very quickly I was looking at different ways that you present something on a website. So for example, GIF animations. We started using GIF animations before any of the rest of the high street. And then the places that we were stocked. So we were stocked in like Selfridges, Urban Outfitters, and they'd sort of like, we'd prove the concept that a gift works, and then they'd start using them as well. But what we also did was we jumped onto fashion film, which is what it was called before the word content came about. So around 2008, 2009 was sort of when fashion film really started emerging as its own genre. And it was something that I immediately became really interested in for various different reasons, you know, creating a mood of a collection, but also showing how a fabric moved, you know, an extension of how you tell stories as a brand, and also just really good fun and so a new skill to learn. So I started, we had friends in Central St. Martin's, and our first fashion film, which I am not showing today because it's really embarrassing, but quite good. But our first fashion film was a collaboration with the newly graduated director from Central St. Martin's. And then really over the years, as I was running the label, we did a little bit of video here and there. So we'd shoot a campaign in New York, and we'd do a video, like a little mood video to sort of headline the campaign to go alongside it, just because we saw the value in doing video and the value in telling stories, and we really enjoyed it, and it came naturally to us. So fast forward 6 years, and I started working in art direction on music videos. So I had this amazing grounding in brand, so looking at video from the point of view of brand. Then I was working in art direction, so like providing the creative for performers. And then I quickly realized that I really wanted to be running the show on set, so I moved over into direction. And that's something that I've been working in a lot over the last couple of years, direction and creative direction. So you might ask why you need a creative director, or why, like, what is creative direction for video content? And the creative director is like, lies sort of on the side of quality control and quality assurance. So that would cover making sure that your video content is the right length, that it represents your brand in the right way, that it has the right colors, that there's a consistency between what you're doing in your video content and the gorgeous brand that you've created, and your social media, and the way that you're talking about your brand. And it's just making sure as well that the specs, so this is the more technical side of it, but that the specs are, so you're shooting in the right dimensions, that you're shooting you know, in the right video specifics for various different platforms. And, you know, there's various reasons why you should use different approaches for different platforms. So what I'm going to do today is go through 5 key points that, whether you're shooting yourself or whether that you're shooting with somebody else, that you should be taking into account when you're shooting video content, to ensure that you've got a 360 brand experience for your consumer. The facts. Always like to start with a few facts. So why should you be using video? Social media posts now with video have 48% more views. So that's a lot more engagement than people just like videos, generally speaking. If you've done a video, well, even any kind of videos, people just love engaging with a moving image, because the difference is, if you look at a picture, you've seen everything. If somebody posts a video, there's this like, there's a reveal. So you don't really know what the video is. Like, you don't know what the start of it is. You don't know what the end of it is. So there is that little air of excitement and discovery when you're working with video. 75% of all video plays are on mobile devices. So this, you know, in terms of advertising, in terms of content, this is your opportunity to catch somebody's imagination for 1 minute or 2 minutes or whatever it is you decide to shoot for, to catch their imagination on the way into work, or when they're on their lunch break, or when they're sitting in the park. you can literally be selling your brand story in literally throughout that person's day. Mobile video content consumption rises by 100% each year. So if you can think of where we're at now and how much more video there is on your feed, imagine where that is going to be in 10 years' time. That's the direction that it's moving. So you need to be, even if you're not making video yet, you need to start thinking about it now and what it could look like and how you can move your strategy to start creating some sort of video content. And then just a little, this is where I'm talking about the specs and creative direction, but 33% of viewers will stop watching a video after 30 seconds, 45% by 1 minute, and 60% by 2 minutes. So really you want to be condensing what you're making into little small amounts of video. And sometimes, I mean, that sounds easier said than done, but sometimes it can nearly be easier to create something lengthy because you have to be really decisive. It's like the difference between sending a really long email, going through everything that you need, and like condensing that into 2 paragraphs. It's, you really have to think about, if you want to include everything and sort of hit all of your key pointers, you really have to condense that. The other thing as well with viewers is, you have like sort of 10 seconds at the opening of a video to hook your viewer in before they get bored. So you can, you know, when you delve into insights and stats and everything, if a viewer gets bored, then they'll leave. It's like your bounce rate on your website. And you can see in stats like how long people watch videos for. So it's really important to hook them in and keep them watching. The other thing actually that I want to say while we're here is that if you're not doing video content just yet, don't panic. So I think our industry in general, like there's a massive push, and you always feel like you have to be doing more and more and more. And I think for small businesses, it's really important to just step back and get a little bit of perspective on stuff. Like, if it's going to stress you out and it's going to take you a whole month to get some really good video content across the line, and that month is better spent working on your e-commerce or going out and like visiting your customers, it's just really important with anything like this is like, are you at the stage where you really need video content, or could you put off a content strategy for another 6 months? So yeah, it's when something like this comes up and everybody's talking about it, I feel like as a small business owner, you do feel like you don't want to get left behind, or you have the FOMO, as it were. But if, you know, listen to your own instinct and feel if now is the right time for you. And if it's not, you know, like 6 months or like even a year, focus on what you need to get done. Because to create good video content, it can be time consuming, but hopefully today I'm going to show you ways that you can create content that will get you started anyway and not stress you out too much. So before this auto plays, those of you who joined me the last time, we did a practical Instagram session. So it was really sort of the basics of Instagram and how to get going. And for that, to indicate how to do that, I created an imaginary pottery brand, which I think I would now actually quite enjoy having one day. That's a whole other story. An imaginary pottery brand called Turned Earth. And Turned Earth was a pottery brand. So we created a sample Instagram for it as well. And it was a pottery brand based in Kerry with a studio that did workshops. So when we talk about brand and branded video content and creative direction, I don't, because I'm from a branded background, when I look at video content, I don't look at video content as something separate to brand. So in terms of your content strategy, where you have your logo and identity, that's your identity. Then when you're working with a brand strategist and designing your brand, they will show how that brand is expressed on Instagram, how it's expressed in flyers, how it's expressed on your e-commerce. Video content is just another branch of the brand, so it's not separate. So if you're creating a really, really strong brand, you need to have consistency across every single consumer point of contact. And that means, you know, logo, colors, identity, same typeface, all of those things. So what we have here is the Turned Earth website and our Instagram. And I've just created a little, it's called a sting. So it's a little short video for the launch of a new collection, just to show you how you can take the brand, the general brand, and apply all of that brand creative to a video. So as you can see, that is something just really simple. It's compelling, it's interesting, it's something that would engage people who are interested in pottery, and it's designed in such a way that it falls like the brand that I designed, the sample brand that I designed for this is quite a minimal brand. So the video is quite minimal, you know, there's no mad tricks or mad motion graphics or anything, and it falls in line with the sort of general vibe that I've created for the brand. So whether you're selling sheepskin rugs or jams, just like have a think about the colors that you use in video, things like the size of the logo, all of those things that are very important parts of the creative element of what you do. Number two, have a think about purpose. So video content it's not just video content, there's lots of different end goals. And as with any of your efforts, whether it's a marketing strategy or a business strategy, you have to think about your end goals and you have to think about your consumers as well. So there's lots of different places where you can use video content, and it might be that you decide that you want to go hell for leather on video content and it's a really important part of your brand, and you might decide that you want to shoot something that you can cut down for your website. You want to shoot, you know, and you can shoot something that's quite broad and then you can edit it down to serve different purposes. So just running through, taking it from the top. So website, a lot of brands now have video content on their homepage, which is just, you know, an upgrade really from a carousel or a stills image, and it's really quite engaging. A campaign film would be more of, it's more of a fashion film, to be honest with you, and campaign films can tend to be a little bit longer as well. So this is where you can tell a story, or you can have something that is has a bit more of a mood or a bit more of a feeling to it. And that's really designed to set the tone for your collection for that season or for that year. And the thing with shooting a campaign as well is that you can, like I said, you can cut that down. So there might be one particular shot that you just have on a loop on your website homepage, and that works perfectly.
Marion, I have a quick question. You asked me to keep an eye on the questions for you.
Sure.
Is the video for social media, do we have to be that formal for Instagram in terms of color, etc.?
Not necessarily. Like if we're talking about Instagram stories, I'm going to totally contradict myself. We don't have to be quite as formal as that, but if we're talking about Instagram stories, I would try and stick to your brand colors. It doesn't need to be the exact typography or the fonts that you're using, but do try and stick in line with your brand. And stuff like, just give a bit of consideration as well to emojis and all of that kind of stuff. You know, is that right for your brand? So, and I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, but like some brands are more contemporary and a bit more minimal, and some brands really have a really crazy, vibrant energy. So emojis are right for them. So just give a little bit of consideration to that. In your Instagram stories as well, or in your Instagram you can be a bit freer on your stories because your stories disappear after 24 hours. If you're putting video on your feed, however, I would get a little bit more formal again. So I would try and stick to some kind of brand handwriting, because for me, the strongest brands have a really well creative directed Instagram. So you'll see elements of the brand running through the Instagram. It'll be the colors, it'll be the mood, it'll be the way things are shot. So, you know, it's very much down to what your brand is, but I definitely, for feed, think about creative direction of your feed, because the more singular the vision and the more solid, the more aligned your Instagram feed is with your product and what you see on the website, the more it bolsters your brand. So what you want, and I've spoke about this before, but with your social media, what you want is, if somebody randomly discovers your brand through a hashtag and they click on and they see your Instagram feed, so everything going down the feed, they'll kind of get a sense of what the brand's about before they even click into the post. And that's when you know, if you think of the strongest brands out there, this is where I talk about like the psychology of color in branding and things like that. Like the strongest brands, there are colors that we see from those brands. Like, you know, you see yellow and blue together, you'll always think IKEA, you know, and that's what you want to be moving towards with brands, where every single place that a consumer encounters your brand is consistent. And that all goes to building your, what's called your brand equity, the value in your brand. So I hope that answered that okay. So yeah, so, and then onto brand engagement, while when we're talking about brand, these can be like brand engagement films, like, so your campaign is going to bolster your brand and it's going to help with your brand awareness, but you could just do something that's a texture. It doesn't need to be super overcomplicated, and you can shoot it on your iPhone, but just give a little bit of creativity to it. You know, like this isn't, it's not an event video, you know, or you can go into details. You can get in really close and think about what can you do different? Like what's when you think about your customers, like when they're in a store, they'll pick up your product and they want to get close to it and they want to get involved, or maybe they want to understand, play with the material. You know, what's going to spark their imagination, and use that to power what you tell, the stories that you tell with your video. Another way that you can work with brand engagement is a how-to. So throughout the winter, if people are going to be in the evenings, perhaps you want to do a little series of 2 or 3 how-to videos, working with something that's really simple and with your brand, or like using materials that you use. And then the other way is just to tell a story. So it could be something interesting about like what I do on my lunch break, or, you know, how the studio gets set up in the morning, or something fun like that. Like it doesn't all have to be brand. And I think as well, at the moment, it is about having the personal touch, and it is about telling your story, because the people that are shopping with you at this point are people who are invested in you as much as your business. So getting the people behind the business out there, and, you know, there's all sorts of little fun things that you can do with that. So talking about the platform and what content is suited to which platforms, I think when you get down to social media, it's very, very specific, and I'll talk you through the reasons why. So the 16:9 aspect ratio, so I'm going to get a bit techie here, but the 16:9 aspect ratio is a horizontal, what's it called? Rectangle. God, I struggled on that one, is a rectangle. And the reason why it's a rectangle is because your eyes look at the world in a rectangular format. So when you're presented with a rectangle on a screen, it's reflecting back. So it's pulling you in to the scene so that you're looking at it with your horizontal eyes. So the rectangular 16:9 aspect ratio would be the commonest ratio that you would see in video content. And 16:9 as an aspect ratio works for your Instagram feed, for your Facebook, for your LinkedIn, and for your Twitter. Now, a little word on that, and I haven't mentioned YouTube here because I don't believe that that is, so while it's a platform that you can host your videos on, as a small brand, using it sort of as a social media platform is going to detract your attention from what you should be focusing on. So to grow a YouTube following is really, really, really challenging and really difficult. And because you guys are makers, it's not really where your consumer is going to encounter your product. So while you might upload your video on there as the host, you can share it to other platforms. You can share it on your LinkedIn via YouTube or your Twitter via YouTube. So just bear that in mind when you're considering. The other option is hosting the video on your website. So that would be ideal, where you can share a link to a blog post. So you're driving all of that traffic back to your website. The one thing to say about 16:9 is that 16:9 works really well on Facebook because Facebook, in the Facebook feed, it will pop up in rectangular format. Once you go to Instagram feed, a video will be cropped in on an Instagram feed if it's posted in 16:9. And when you click through to it, you will be able to watch it in the full width. However, and this is why a lot of brands are like cutting down their video content into different sizes, you have to think of the platform or the device that people are looking at something on. And what you want to do is give them as best a quality viewing as they possibly can get. So if you bear in mind that, like, so I've got a really tiny, this is my tiny iPhone. So I've got a really tiny iPhone here. And if you think about the screen, like a 16:9 on that fills that space. So I'm not really getting into the detail, whereas a square will fill a much bigger amount of space. And that would be the reason. So for me with the tiny iPhone, it just means that I get a much more impactful version of the video. So that is the reason why you would, like a 1:1 ratio is specifically for Instagram, and it will give you the best quality output for that platform. And the other thing about 1:1 is it's fine. It works on Facebook as well. It works on the others, but it's really specifically designed for Instagram.
Okay, I have a quick question here,
sure.
from somebody who's concentrating, and rightly so, on Generation Zs. What would be the right size for TikTok?
Woo, God, that was a bit of a curveball. I don't actually know, because TikTok is not my area of speciality yet.
Well, we go and research that one. Do you think we should? I mean, I'm beginning to sound like a worn out drum here, because I'm delighted that Margaret mentioned TikTok. I don't want to deviate completely, but yeah, younger people are telling me that if we want to catch them for craft and design for the future, that we shouldn't lose sight of it.
Oh, 100%.
Out there. That's it.
Yeah, 100. Like,
will we research this and come back to Margaret, will we? Or
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm conscious that we have some people who are just getting onto Instagram here, and then we have some people who are really well versed in social media, and that is something that I can absolutely look into. For the clients, you know, it's also about your market, and it's about the amount of time that you have. So I always say, like, when I'm talking to anybody about their social media strategy, think of what you can make think of where your market hangs out, and think of what you can make your superpower. So for example, I had a client that I was working with that was developing tech products for the menopause. And we set them up with an Instagram account, a Twitter account, and we set up a Facebook group. And the Facebook group was where all of the engagement was. So as a result, that was where we put all of our efforts. So that is the one thing that I would just be mindful of, is that, like, yes, absolutely, in order to capture the next generation coming up, you should be using, in order to capture the next generation coming up, it is important to know what platforms they hang out on. However, if it's not relevant for your brand at this moment, and you're finding that your followers or your market is a bit older, put your efforts into the social media platform that your market hangs out on. So generally speaking, and I'm absolutely generalizing here, but 40 and above, Facebook and Twitter. Now, I'm 42 and I'm the complete exception to that rule, as I'm sure many of us on here are. I love Instagram. That's where I hang out. Instagram is generally speaking like it's under 35s, and then your TikToks are your under 25s. So think about which category your market slots into, because that's where you're most likely to find them hanging out. So it's like if, I'm trying to think, it's like knowing, it's like having a market stall and thinking, you know, where are people most likely to buy your product? You know, which part of town are people most likely to buy your product? You're going to go to where you know they already are, rather than trying to get them from somewhere else, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's a really good question about TikTok, and I will come back to you.
And Marion, could you glance at the screen in the chat here, because Dan has a lot of technicalities that would be easier for you to read rather than me relaying them. Can you see it there?
Just trying to figure out the technicalities of my screen.
Just in the chat.
No, hold on, I'm almost there. Oh yes, I see the updates
but
here.
The next generation is I mean, as all of our audience know, they're extremely important, and there is a large group of them out there, 24 to 26-year-olds, who are interested in design. They're now working for tech firms from home, and they have interest and they have disposable income. I just leave it at that.
100%. And you know, this goes back to something else that I was saying as well, is like, if you're aiming to approach that market, then another way of doing it, and this was related to the marketing, but is try and find an influencer or an emerging influencer in that area and get them to champion your brand, you know, and then you can start building it that way. Like, what's going to give you the step up? So going to the chat. Here we go. What video format does, yeah, I don't have all the specs on TikTok, but I can find all of that out for you. Video resolution must be 720 by, okay, so video resolution, I don't know if this is for TikTok, but yeah, that looks about right to me. I mean, 640 by 640, I presume you're talking about square video, and I would usually say 1000 by 1000 on Instagram video. File type .mov or MP4 for file type. Videos, duration of 5 to 60 seconds. Short videos are 9 to 15. It depends. It all depends on what you're using the video for. So it depends on whether it's an ad, what you're trying to sell, what the call to action is. With Instagram in particular, like with Facebook, you can have longer than 60 seconds. I generally don't recommend longer than 60 seconds because your consumer just starts to switch off. And 9 to 15 seconds, again, it depends. Like 9 to 15 seconds doesn't give you a huge amount of time to deliver a message. So there's a lot of variables and sort of moving parts in this that, yeah, that it just depends on your brand and what you're making. Does that answer okay?
Thanks, Marion.
Now, just bear with me while I try to get back to my screen. There we go. So number 4 is your creative. So that's specifically what a creative director would work on, and what all of you as creative directors can work on too. So number 1, storyboard. This is literally just mapping out what your video is going to be about. So you're going to draw shot by shot what you're going to have in the frame, so that if you're using a model or you're working with the videographer or you're shooting it yourself, you can literally check off the shots as you get them. So when you're designing video content, and I say designing video content because that's how I work with it, that's how I direct, I will gather all of my thoughts of what I want to do, or I will have examples that I look at, and I will almost imagine frame by frame, shot by shot, what every single shot is going to look like. And I will do like very naive, very sketchy drawings of, you know, hand lifts up and jewelry turns around, and, you know, little, and right at the bottom, you know, whether it's a close-up shot or whether it's a wide shot, just to give you something to work off. And you as creative business people, this is something that you can do really easily because it's something that you do all the time. You know, you're designing packaging, you're designing your product, you're strategizing. So it's those exact skills distilled into video. So in terms of shots, so are your shots, like I said, are they going to be, if you have a model, is it going to be a mid shot? So is it going to be from the waist upwards? Are you going to get in really close to show the detail of the handle of a mug? Is it going to be an extreme close-up of a face? What are all the different types of shots that you want to get? Cuts. So this is an important one. So your cuts and your edit will give your resulting video an energy. So is it something fast-paced? Is it quick? You know, are you going to have a strong energy, or is it something very peaceful and kind of flowing? And all of these little factors work together. So they're all the threads that you weave together to deliver the finished product, which is your stunning videos. Slow-mo or regular. So this is whether you're going to shoot the product in slow motion, which I really like slow motion. I think everything looks better in slow-mo, but obviously it means that your content could be a little bit longer, or just regular motion. The other thing you will see in brand videos is a thing called speed ramps and time lapses and things like that. Personally, I'm not a massive fan of time lapses for the area of brand, because I feel there's certain video content cliches almost that are just a little bit too overused. So just be mindful that you've gone to the effort of creating your beautiful product, and make sure that you're applying that same perfection and attention to detail to your video content. Music. So music, as a video content creator, you can buy all sorts of stock music, and it's really important to take this into consideration, because just think about how you want your consumer to feel. So what do they want to watch? What do they want to engage in? And how do you want to make them feel? Do you want to spark their imagination? Do you want to make them feel uplifted? Do you want to make them feel relaxed? This is where it all comes back to your brand values. And with video content, you're looking at bringing your brand values over into the area of video. And then color. So again, something that I always return to is, what are your brand colors? What's your identity? What's the color of your product? So have a think about if you're going to use what color backdrops, or if there's people in your product videos, what are they wearing? How does it all tie back into everything that goes into your delivering your brand message? Promotion. So this is a really important one as well. And once you have your amazing video content, you've gone to a lot of effort to make it. So you want to make sure that you get the most out of your video content as possible. So in terms of, there's different routes that you can do this. So advertising is one. So if you make an amazing brand campaign video, you might want to throw a little bit of budget behind advertising, because this is what people want to watch. And if if it's really nice and it's really special, people will engage, because they'll appreciate the effort that you've gone to. Cross-pollinate. So cross-pollinate is something that always tell people to work on. Have a think about all of your channels, and if you're creating one really nice piece of video, how can you filter that down all of your channels so that you capture different people's imaginations, or you capture different audiences. One way of cross-pollinating is your marketing email. So you will have a database of customers and fans of the brand. So don't forget to send the video out to them, but also ask your customers, you know, if you're sending them a marketing email, tell them to share it. Ask people. And we don't really do enough of that in our industry. And people really want to help, and people really support brands that they're invested in. So asking people to like, or to tag, or to share, or to forward to a friend, or any of those kind of things, especially in the current climate, now is when that can really work to your favor. Friends, so think about your own friends as well. Like if I create something and I want to get shares in it, I will send it to my Facebook friends or my friends on Instagram, and like just ask them if they can help get it out there, because we're all in it together and we're all creating and sort of trying to get our work out there. So supporting each other in this way is really important. Customers.
Nice comment in, sorry to cut across you there, from Dan.
Yeah.
Saying that his typical client is a Hermes person.
Yes.
Most of his products are over 700 euros, and Hermes has 10.3 million followers. And he says, I'm going to focus on YouTube and Instagram. He's a very small operation on purpose. Discuss.
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot to ask there. Like I would almost need to speak to him in person about how many followers he has.
That could be possible afterwards, okay?
Yeah, just like, just to sort of for everybody to know, you know, that's something quite specific. And like I've said before, it's looking at, okay, well, what is it about your brand that will appeal to that customer? Where do we find those customers? Is there any ways that we can engage some of Hermes customers by little tricks of the trade, Instagram tricks of the trade? Why are you focusing on YouTube? You know, there's a lot of sort of
so I tell you what we'll do
for me.
If he can follow that up, or we'll follow that up together, you and me, with him afterwards.
Yeah.
But we also are keen that people keep blasting the questions at us to make it interactive, so that those items that we can follow up afterwards, if everyone's getting this, items that we can follow up afterwards, that we can actually identify them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to think that we've given any short answers, but if it's better that we bring them out, and then if they're too specific for today's platform, that we'll follow up on them afterwards. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's it exactly. We have answers to all of these questions, but I am mindful of the fact that this is quite a broad video content chat to spark your imagination, give you some pointers. And then like Emer said, if there's something specific that you need help with, or that needs attention, or questions that you just can't get your head around, we are both available afterwards. So hopefully this is sparking your imagination as we go. So yeah, coming back to promotion, customers, public. So these are people who are already fans of the brand. Ask them to share, send it on to them, think of cool ways for them to engage in. And then customers, stores. So all of your stockists, you know, stockists are looking for video content as well. And that would be user generated content for them. So if you've created a really beautiful video and, you know, you want to get it out there, you can send it to your stockists and say, hey, this is something that we made, it's our new collection launch, you know, because you're supporting them and supporting you to buy the product and get your brand out there. So it's all of these little networks that once you have it, just think about all of the people that you can send it to that can get the views on it. And I guess like this is talking more maybe about a campaign, or, you know, what we call a hero video for the season. But, you know, if it's just your little day-to-day bits of video content that aren't massively difficult to produce, you don't necessarily need to be pushing them. But just play it by ear, sort of depending on the type of content that you've made and the regularity with which you're making it as well. So that sort of wraps up our 5 takeaways. What I'm going to do now is just show you a couple of different projects that I've worked on, as well as a vertical video campaign that was Marie Claire by Next, which I didn't personally direct, but it just gives you a nice view into what a good vertical video could look like. So yeah, moving on here. Okay, so first of all, I'll just pause on that one. So first of all, this is a brand that I work with every season, who I'm actually shooting with tomorrow, which is quite exciting. But Inner Island, some of you will know Gemma. She's got a lovely jewellery brand, sells minimal, sort of quite minimal designs. And we were shooting her lookbook, and we decided to make a campaign film at the same time. So it was quite a creative in terms, like quite a clearly defined creative, and a really nice story in terms of creative direction. She was moving into a new material. So she was working with, I think they're called Keshi pearls, if I remember correctly, but she was starting to work with Keshi pearls. And my background is in history of art, and we sort of put our heads together and came up with the idea of doing a modern version of a Vermeer painting, Girl with a Pearl Earring. So just having a nod to that, but sort of making it more contemporary in line with what Gemma has done with pearls. So she's moved pearls away from the sort of more traditional twin set and pearls aesthetic into something that's more contemporary and has, you know, works well with cleaner lines and minimal kind of styling. So we're going to have a look at this one. So that was just, it was just a mood film, a campaign film, and there's a whole series of photography. So the lookbook was shot in the exact same creative direction, and altogether it gave her lots of content to push out. The shoot ended up getting featured in the Cork Examiner, and yeah, it just gave her lots of things to push out on social and to help draw attention and to publicize the new collection. So what we have here is something quite different and a slightly different angle. So the fashion brand Joseph engaged me to deliver a series. So I actually designed and developed and shot 6 of these. They had a new footwear collection launching, and they weren't doing an entire fashion film because the Joseph budgets are really quite big. So they weren't doing an entire fashion film, but they wanted to do a series of 6 short films around 6 of their key footwear styles to whet the appetite of their consumer ahead of the footwear launch. And in terms of Joseph, their brand creative is quite artful, it's quite edgy, it's a little bit abstract at times. So these videos, they approached me with the idea that like this isn't about selling the product, it's about getting people interested. It's about creating something that is somewhere between art and fashion, just in order to spark their imagination and to publicize the footwear launch. So I'll just play each of these and go. First of all, before I play them actually, I'll just tell you a little bit about the concept behind it. So this is where your creative direction comes in. You know, what is the concept? What are you, why is it different? And it's not just a 10-second video of a shoe. So The collection, their overall collection, the autumn winter collection that season, was inspired by men's tailoring, and they wanted to do something that was a bit more abstract, like I said. So I conceptualized the idea of kind of shoe and office archetypes. So looking at how a shoe can have a personality in the office, and a visual sort of examination as well of the interplay between hemline and shoe, because aesthetically a shoe can appear very different depending on what hemline rests on it, and you can tell a slightly different story. So down to the whole idea of storytelling, you know, this is storytelling on a very, very small scale, but there's still a concept and an idea and an intention behind it, which led to some quite interesting imagery. So these were social media stings. So these were pushed out on their Instagram and got thousands of views, just by fans of the brand who were excited that there was a new product launch. The background sound as well. So the sound design, I went to an office and I recorded some of the generic sort of office background noise. So it's quite a sort of ambient soundscape. So I'll just play them one by one. So a very different aesthetic there. And it's worth mentioning that these don't look what we'd classify as well shot. They're blurry and they're out of focus. The quality doesn't look amazing, but that was part of the overall aesthetic. I guess it's like buying that pair of designer shoes that are like pre-worn and a pre-loved aesthetic. Like, it's a look and it's a feel, and that was part of what they were expressing as a brand that season. So it fell in line with everything else that they were doing. So these are all creative choices that you make when you shoot video content to communicate a certain aesthetic or to communicate a certain season. And then this one, which is more your traditional advertisement. So this was Marie Claire by Next Collection, shot by a production company in London called The Foundry. And I just wanted to show you how this video has been specifically designed for vertical. So if you look at the composition, it's more of a classic lookbook, fashion lookbook kind of composition, but it absolutely suits the format. And also the sound. So the sound and the music is a very, very different energy to what I've just shown you. So something more typical of the production company that made it. But you can see how just even these little things can give you a completely different feeling when you watch them. So an altogether very different look there. And that brings me to the end of what I'm talking about today. If you have any further questions or you need any further advice on anything, you can reach out to Emer or myself. And I'll hand back over to you, Emer. I don't know if there's any more questions or comments or anything.
Marion, listen, thank you so much for everything. That was really informative. And as we said earlier, a lot of these are person specific. And as you said, there's a wide range of an audience with us today. So it was the beginning of the journey and the questions, and really if everyone could follow up either through me or if they could email you directly, I'd appreciate that. And then Marion and I will TikTok, I think is what I was looking for there, TikTok on this, and with some lovely thank yous in. And Dan has said to us that the Marie Claire ad is no nonsense. So I was very impressed. I was very impressed by the Joseph one as well. And we've got a lot of thanks. And I look forward to meeting you again, Marion. We will stay in touch. Thank you very much for our audience today. And I'd just like to let you all know that next Wednesday, I'll be drawing our COVID initial survival webinars and clinics to a close with marketing, and we have Maeve Ring, and that is also the DCCI's intention in the autumn to run an optimized light to utilize people's social media presence and to develop it. Sorry, Dan, thank you so much. He's correcting me here and he's dead right. It's next Tuesday. For the first time, we will be having one on a Tuesday and not a Wednesday. So I'm glad I've Dan in my corner. So listen, everyone, I will see you next week, and I look forward to it. And Marion, thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.